The US food shortage, it's a meat-pocalypse. That is according to some information that I received from a meat industry insider about the beef market. Apparently, beef prices are expected to skyrocket in the near future. Due to last year's drought and farmers sending their cattle to slaughter, the current herd is at the lowest in decades. And I warned you guys, I told you last year, yeah, we're not seeing the problem right now, but we will. Now, this scarcity is driving up prices, and it is predicted to continue rising throughout the summer. So, if you come across any good deals on beef, it might be a good idea to stock up. Have you noticed beef prices going up in your area? Or maybe prices on other grocery items? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, will the US face a food shortage? There is definitely evidence to think so.
You got to realize that even prior to the invasion, global food stocks were tight. That is, we had run down levels over the last couple of years. Part of that due to the pandemic, but some of it due to the fact that we had weather issues. We had a drought in the North America that affected the wheat crop last year in Canada and parts of the US. We're just coming out of a drought in South America, which has adversely affected the Brazil soybean crop. And Brazil's, the largest soybean exporter in the world.
Coming right out of that kind of historic disturbance of the world, boom, we're hit with a really huge geopolitical event.
In response, food costs have climbed to its highest level in nearly 2 years, while prices for commodities like wheat and corn have reached the highest it's been in a decade.
I mean, who can forget the early days of the C-19 pandemic where supermarket shelves were stripped of everything that you needed and the grocery basics were basically hard to come by? From milk to eggs to meat products, stores saw a run on different foods, but surprise, surprise, in recent release reports, the House Select Subcommittee on the C-19 crisis says the claims made by the country's meatpacking industry at the time were warning of an impending protein shortage were flimsy, if not outright false. Yeah, in the in-depth, far-reaching report on the meatpacking industry's behavior during the early days of the pandemic, the committee also said the claim was made to justify operating meatpacking plants under dangerous conditions, not to mention cranking up meat prices that still have yet to come down post-pandemic. Really? It all just points to the fact that the U.S. food industry or food supply chain for beef is inadequate to meet America's food security needs. And this informs us that the market structure responsible for delivering an abundant, safe, and affordable supply of beef and other food items to American consumers is systemically broken. I mean, really, the problem is that the U.S. cattle industry underproduces for the U.S. market. We simply do not have enough domestic cattle to satisfy America's appetite for beef. We need to provide opportunities for domestic cattle producers to begin rebuilding their cattle herds. Plus, American consumers should be given the information to know when the meat that they're buying is actually American made and not just packaged and distributed here, but really, from who knows where. There's also the issue of reestablishing market competition as the controlling force. That'll mean an end to America's dependency on foreign beef. In the US, meat processing is in the hands of a few corporations. For beef, it's JBS, Tyson, Cargill, and Marfrig that control roughly 85% of the market. Now, JBS, Tyson, and Hormel, they account for 66% of the pork, while Tyson, JBS, Sanderson Farms, and Purdue, they handle about 51% of chicken. Now, are these American companies selling American meat? Well, JBS, for one, is based in Brazil. Tyson, meanwhile, has been implicated in a number of recent scandals. The company limited employee breaks to the point where processing plant workers were forced to wear diapers. It also faced a class action lawsuit alleging that the company, along with others, engaged in a long-term price-fixing scheme that cost average families the equivalent of about $330 a year. Now, that's a pretty huge chunk of our rent. Cargill is among one of the largest privately held U.S. companies. It often markets and labels its turkey products sold under the Shady Brook Farms label or the Honeysuckle White Brands label as being raised by independent family farmers, when in fact, they come from its own corporate-controlled industrial farms. Meanwhile, Marfrig Global Food, a Brazilian company, they own the majority of National Beef Packing Company based in Kansas City, Missouri. Its parent company has been accused of human rights violations, knowingly destroying the Amazon rainforest, and other environmental violations. So, do you feel like the U.S. meat supply is in good hands here? Yeah, I question that too. All right, let's go ahead and get on with this. Oh, and by the way, if you own a home, make sure your home is protected. Get your free home warranty quote. There's a link in the description down below this video. It's so weird seeing the storm of shortages slowly creeping toward us again. Stores have employee shortages as well, which might explain some of the low inventory on the shelves. But really, the headlines here is how meat companies have been taking us for a ride. When meat packing plants had to close because scores of workers were catching and dying from C-19, executives began to sound the alarm that a meat shortage was at hand. The CEO of Smithfield, Kenneth Sullivan, even said, quote, "The closure of this facility combined with a growing list of other protein plants that have shuttered across our industry is pushing our country perilously close to the edge in terms of our meat supply. It is impossible to keep our grocery stores stocked if our plants are not running," end quote. They made it sound like grocery store shelves would be empty without their operations running smoothly. So guess what? A new report from the House Select Subcommittee on the C-19 crisis suggests that these claims were flimsy, if not outright false. So it seems like the meat industry may have been using the shortage scare to justify running their plants under unsafe conditions. Plus, meatpacking companies saw record exports during the period. Okay, so here's the inside scoop from the House committee report. It seems that meatpacking companies had some serious influence over the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They apparently lobbied political appointees at the USDA to keep their plants running, even going as far as trying to silence what they called those pesky health departments. But that's not all, guys. These companies even managed to convince the Trump White House to ignore concerns from state and local health departments about the risks posed by the C-19 in the industry. Now, according to the report, both Smithfield and Tyson went a step further and they pushed for an executive order to protect themselves from lawsuits related to worker illnesses and deaths. Smart move, but was it ethical? And thanks to what these meatpacking companies did, they traced a whopping 334,000 C-19 cases back to these facilities. They estimate that the economic impact of these illnesses, which included healthcare costs, lost wages, even deaths, amounting to a whopping $11.2 billion. And these figures are actually on the conservative side. According to Tina Satone, the lead author on the study, the report likely underestimates the true economic losses, end quote. So what were the CEOs and other meatpacking executives doing all this time? Making bank exporting American meat. Now, the U.S. Census Bureau reveals that during the same time, we sold over $22 billion of meat in overseas markets. According to the Midwest Center for Investigative Reporting, the meat industry experienced its highest level of exports since 2014. JBS, for example, sold more pork to China in 2020 than they did the entire year 2017. And Smithfield? They managed to send a whopping 90% more pork products during the same period. And at the same time, these very same companies were claiming we didn't have enough meat and basically pulled out supplies from our grocery stores and left all the shelves empty. Now, unfortunately, the situation hasn't improved much since then. And the problem is clear. The U.S. cattle industry simply doesn't produce enough beef to meet the demand within the country. We're falling short when it comes to domestic cattle supply. But here's the puzzling part. Sometimes there seems to be enough beef available, and other times there isn't. So what's really going on? About 10 years ago, the USDA reported that about 18% of the US beef supply came from imports, including beef and cattle from other countries. Today, that number has increased to an estimated 20% of our beef supply coming from imports. So that means a lot for food security. The truth is, the US doesn't have enough cattle to achieve self-sufficiency in beef production. And if a major geopolitical event like what happened in the Ukraine or another disruptive disease pandemic were to occur, disrupting the supply chain and cutting off foreign imports, we could very well face a shortfall of up to 20% in beef needed to stock grocery store shelves. And so that means empty beef shelves and soaring prices for the available beef would become inevitable. So this raises a very important question. Why doesn't the US produce more beef to reduce our dependence on imported beef? Well, you can thank the broken market structure that was intentionally designed to maintain a reliance on foreign beef. The multinational beef packers and their lobbying allies have played a very significant role in shaping this flawed system. They fiercely defend America's dependency on foreign imports because those imports are cheaper for them and nobody can distinguish it from domestically raised beef. So this not only threatens our food security, but it also allows importers to profit while deceiving customers. So what does this mean for us as US citizens? It means that if we continue to rely on foreign beef instead of producing enough domestically, we face a higher risk of future beef shortages in our grocery stores. Now, we've experienced this in the past, and it could happen again. Now, Congress definitely needs to take action here. Some substantial reforms on the structure of the cattle and beef market. And so that means rebalancing the market and providing opportunities for domestic cattle producers to rebuild their herds. And really, just empowering American consumers to be able to know when we're supporting the domestic beef supply chain in the meat that we buy. Competition is really the key word here, as this is the real driving force to reduce America's dependence on foreign beef. It's up to each and every one of us to convince our respective members of Congress to stop catering to big money interests and to start representing cattle producers on one end of the beef supply and consumers on the other. We need to push Congress to take two important steps. So first, they gotta pass the American Beef Labeling Act, giving consumers the choice to support the domestic beef supply chain. Second, they have to tell the highly concentrated beef packers to compete for domestic cattle. Now, one thing that I do know, I would really miss my burgers if beef starts running out on the shelves. So what about you guys? Are you looking forward to meat prices skyrocketing even further? Yeah, me neither. Let me know if you want to learn more about the upcoming food shortages and price increases. So last year, we were paying premium prices for peaches like I had never seen before. But hopefully this year, we don't see prices skyrocket like we did previously. Anyway, more to come in the next one. This was your beef and food shortage update. What's happening in the industry and all the shady dealing meat packing companies are into. Appreciate you guys watching. Also, right now, you should see 2 videos above my head. Go ahead and click on these videos and check them out right now. I want to thank you guys for always dropping a huge like for the video. Basically, thanks for always being there. Very much appreciated. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next update. Y'all be safe.